Hi, welcome to Coursable, Environmental Science Edition, brought to you by Mr. Katz and the Whitney Young Science Department.
Today we're talking about water pollution.
Yuck!
That's right, Tori. It is yuck. Pollution, by definition, is yuck. In terms of water, it's any chemical, biological, or physical change in water quality that harms living organisms or makes water unsuitable for desired uses.
That sounds like a problem we should be trying to solve.
Hopefully after watching this video, people will be inspired too. Should we get started then?
For sure! We're going to be talking about the causes and effects of water pollution, how it affects the lakes and streams, groundwater, and oceans, and how we can best deal with the problems it causes.
Water pollution can come from two different types of sources. We call these point and non-point sources. A point source is something like a factory or an oil tanker, which discharges pollutants and at specific locations into bodies of surface water. Non-point sources are broad and diffuse areas rather than points from which pollutants enter bodies of surface water. These can be things like croplands, log forests, or even a parking lot. The biggest causes for water pollution are agricultural activities, industrial facilities, and mining, respectively.
Now that we know the causes, what are the effects?
Where do I even start? Seriously, water pollution can result in disease, a depletion of dissolved oxygen needed by aquatic species, excessive growth of algae, increased toxins in aquatic systems, and disruptions of processes like photosynthesis or a food web.
Whoa, disease is one of the most common effects. In fact, diarrhea caused by exposure to polluted water on average kills a young child every 18 seconds.
Like I said, it's serious.
I wish we could just not do anything and this would just fix itself.
Actually, in a way, if we had stopped doing things a while ago, we might not have this problem. You see, streams have the ability to essentially clean themselves of a variety of pollutants. That is, of course, if we don't completely overload them. Unfortunately, we have.
So how major is it?
Well, half of the world's 500 rivers are heavily polluted. Most of these are in developing countries. Take China, for example. 1/3 of its rivers are unfit for agricultural or even industrial use. More than half of its population lives without sewage treatment, and 300 million people have no access to drinkable water. That's almost equivalent to the entire US population without drinking water.
Wow, that's pretty major.
Pretty major. Luckily, improvements are being made in developed countries. In the 1970s, a number of water pollution control laws were enacted in the US. These help to increase the number and the quality of wastewater treatment facilities, as well as requiring industries to eliminate discharging harmful chemicals into surface water. There have been a few major successful cleanups, like Ohio's Cuyahoga River and the Thames River in Great Britain.
So what about the lakes?
Unfortunately, we aren't as lucky with the lakes. In a stream, it takes several days to a week for the water to flush and change, whereas in a lake, it can take anywhere from 1 to 100 years. This makes them more vulnerable to pollution.
You know, our drinking water has been contaminated too.
Oh, I bet. Tell us about it.
You got it! About half of the US population and 95% of people in the rural areas get the water they drink from groundwater. Anything that is dumped on the ground can seep through and contaminate groundwater. And once this happens, it is difficult and expensive to remove. And unlike a self-cleaning stream, it can take up to thousands of years for all the contaminated groundwater to clean itself.
Well, I mean, at least we can't see the ugly pollution.
That's actually one of the biggest problems. Because people can't see it, they think they aren't affected by it. It makes it harder for people to protect their sources of drinking water.
So how can we protect groundwater?
Prevention!
Prevention?
Yes, prevention. It's the only effective way to protect groundwater. We can prevent groundwater pollution by finding substitutes for toxic chemicals, requiring leak detectors on underground tanks, and banning the disposal of hazardous waste in landfills and injection wells.
Is there any government support for the protection of our drinking water?
Well, 54 countries have laws establishing standards for safe drinking water. The U.S. Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974 established what we call maximum containment levels. In order for water to be considered safe for us to drink, the amount of pollution cannot exceed these levels.
What about developing countries?
Unfortunately, most developing countries have not yet created any laws or restrictions on what people can and cannot safely drink. This is one reason why water pollution is so much more harmful in developing countries.
It just keeps getting more serious.
I know! So we've covered lakes and streams. What's next? Oceans?
That's right! It's time to talk about ocean pollution. Coastal areas are where pollution affects the ocean the most. In deeper waters, the oceans can dilute, disperse, and degrade large amounts of raw sewage and other types of degradable pollutants.
Well, that sucks! Coastal areas are the most radical vacation spots.
I know! There's another popular vacation area that also has a lot of pollution. Cruise ships cause tons of pollution because they dump waste into the sea. This problem is majorly underreported, so a lot of people don't know about it.
Aren't oil spills super bad too?
Super duper bad. Tanker accidents and blowouts at offshore drilling rigs get the most publicity because they're so visible. That's probably what you're thinking of. Smaller oil spills can be cleaned up, but the big ones like Exxon Valdez in 1989 are much more difficult to deal with.
What the heck is an Exxon Valdez?
Back in '89, the Exxon Valdez oil tanker went off course and hit Bly Reef. It released 41 million liters of crude oil into Prince William Sound of Alaska. This is the largest oil spill ever in U.S. waters. It blackened 3,200 miles of Alaskan coastline.
Gross!
I know! The spill killed about 250,000 animals living in the area and caused $15 billion in damage. The only good part is that the spill led to improvements in oil tanker safety and cleanup strategies.
I know about some improvements that have been made.
Cool beans!
After the Clean Water Act was established, annual wetland losses decreased by 80%. The amount of topsoil loss was cut by about 1.1 billion metric tons annually, and the proportion of U.S. population served by sewage treatment plants increased from 32% to, guess?
74?
74%, correct!
So what can we do to prevent it?
There's lots we can do. First, we can start with reducing non-point runoff, reusing treated wastewater for irrigation, find substitutes for toxic solutions, practice the 3 R's, you know, yours.
Reuse? Recycle?
Yes, reduce poverty, slow population growth, minimize the use of pesticides, prevent yard waste from entering storm drains, don't use water fresheners in the toilet, don't flush medicine down the toilet, don't flush harmful chemicals into the ground or the toilet.
Thanks, Tori! I hope you guys enjoyed this Crash Coursable Environmental Science Edition.
Have fun, you Crash Coursable!